It's a pretty impressive setup, isn't it? So thank you for having me. I'm really overwhelmed by how impressive this is. You can see, no matter where you go, you can see everything. And listening to Timu, who I raced around to say, I'm so inspired. He just seems to understand everything so well. So I'm going to be talking to you about learning to hack time. So not your breath or, or your body or eating better, but working with your mind. A little bit about who I am. If you go to Google and you type in most connected man, 3 years ago I would come up. But like 4 years ago you would have to type in like most connected man in the world. But today you can go to Google and just type most connected. So I'm hoping next year you can just type most, because I think that is such a good way to live life with good Google search. About a decade ago, I was really struggling with my health, and I was a SQL programmer, so I did database work. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm never sure how the feedback loop works, and you know we're cyborgs, we need feedback. So I went to my doctor. My doctor didn't have much clue, so I asked him about my medical records, and he let me see them, but he wouldn't let me keep them. So I started taking small notes when I would see my doctor, and he'd be like, what are you writing down? I'm like, just what you're saying to me, what you should be doing. Shortly after that, I asked for all of my notes, and I had them scanned, and I paid someone on Mechanical Turk to type them all out, 20 years worth of notes. I just turned 49, so I have a lot of medical records. From there, I started looking at all the trends on the internet that I could subscribe to about where there was sickness near me. So one of the first ones I used was called Flu Near You. So I would call my doctor when I would get an alert, and it would say, Chris, you know, the flu is 1 block away. And I'd call and say, Dr. Alfred, the flu, it's down the street. And he'd hang up on me. He didn't like me using the internet for anything. From there, I joined some of these patient communities where I could compare notes with other people who were on medicines that I was on. It made me sicker because I developed all the things they had. Obviously, by 2010, I started wearing a lot of devices, mostly underneath my clothes, because people get a little disturbed when they see you covered in technology. You become like this circus clown. And then by 2011, I was getting into biomes and genetics. But the biggest problem I found was, in 2012, my entire life was not at my doctor's office or in these devices. My entire life was in this thing. And we all know we just hit the 10-year anniversary for the iPhone 2. So when I slowly started to unpack my phone and look at what my phone knew about me, I was amazed. A lot of the privacy debates, a lot of the dissension, a lot of the war that we experience today comes because these devices lock up all this information about us. So what I did was I wanted to create a way that I could extract information from my phone. So what I did was I went ahead, let me get back up, I sometimes have problems with these slides. This is all the information that my phone knew about me. So everything to do with when I did work, where I went, anything to do with health, who I interacted with, how I spent my money, what type of environments I was in, air quality, things like that, the music I listened to. So it was a lot. So I created this system to drag the information out of my phone, organize it, weigh it, and then move it into a repository, which led me into this very first profound awakening of, well, what type of repository would be a good repository for my life? And I thought it needs to be available on any phone in the whole world if you're going to see your entire life, and it needs to be easily understandable. So I started reading a little bit about Greek philosophy and found these concepts of time. And obviously, the first thing I found was Kronos, or chronology, which was how time is ordered and how we experience time. Seconds become minutes, minutes become hours, days become weeks. In that way, I could go back and re-look at the same data and start to weigh it and organize it differently. So I looked at any information that involved time and how I projected data into time, such as social media, and weighed it differently. I found 10 years ago that what I did online was aspirational. If someone could see my data, it's what I wanted them to believe or what I wanted to believe. Although the data that was coming from my sensors was more internal. It wasn't something that I really had a lot of control over. Not then, I do now. It's slowing yourself down. And then obviously the data inside my body from genetics and blood tests and things, those were proof that these systems are working. So the repository I created was a Google Calendar. And as you can see, my Google Calendar was very, very, very complex. So as I did things like jumped or spoke loud, my Google Calendar got an update automatically. So my phone, the devices around me, they all used secret Twitter accounts. I'm getting an alert. They all used secret RSS feeds to populate my life and my calendar. The reason I chose a calendar was it was easy to understand very quickly. I could look at one day with color coding and see whether it was a good day or a bad day, or I could look at it in diary view and see all the data of my day. What was amazing about having my entire life in a calendar was I could do things most people couldn't by 2013. First off, I could visualize my behavior very quickly. Second of all, I could search it. You can search your calendar very easy. So if you want days when you're happy, days when you're sad, when's the last time you were here, when's the last time you talked to this person, it was all there. But more importantly, I could create amazing feedback loops. So if I was on the phone on a conference call and I was talking to someone and I started getting upset, my lights would slightly dim. If my dogs were jumping around and things like that, music would play real loud and slow them down. So I had all these kind of environmental, biological feedback loops that were slowly evolving me. People get really hung up on the number of sensors the world's most connected man has, and I thought I'd kind of address this a little bit. It's not just sensors and wearable technology. That's the simplest part of it. It's really about how you look at them as an ecosystem around your life. So on your body, you'll have some devices, right? You all at least have a phone. Some of you have a wearable on your wrist. But from there, you also have devices in and around your home and or place of work. Exponentially, usually 2 to 3 times more devices you interact with just walking outside than you wear, right? Everything from traffic cams to ATM machines. From there, you then have all these sensors built on top of and using applications in your devices. So you can literally go to 100 different ones if you just look at your phone and the sensors that are using, the applications using the devices in your phone. And then from there, you've got the service architecture. So all the things that promote and make the applications run. So for instance, Dropbox is a service you might use, but when you save to Dropbox, there's a certain set of behaviors or habits around that. When you send an email, you think of it as email, but usually there's a certain set of behaviors and or people around those things. So I think, in a way, I didn't understand. I was starting to deconstruct a moment. I was starting to lock down in a very cybernetic Buddhist way. This is a single moment. This is what happened in that moment. Which led me on this kind of like my mind just got so fucking crazy, right? Because I was like, shit, there's a lot going on in my life. Like, even if I don't do anything, people are messaging me and asking me for things and bills are due. That's why life seems so overwhelming, because digital flattens it out, right? So I said, there has to be a second way, and there was. And it was this other form of time in Greek called Kairos. And Kairos is not like Kronos, where it's, quantifiably this, and this, but it's these things happen, and you get a feeling. It's almost a gut feeling. The Christian Bible calls it seasons, right? That moment you strike. But how is Kairos organized? So I really started deep diving into that, and a lot of the talks I've done on being a mindful cyborg talk about Kairos hacking. But today we're just talking about straight time hacking, so I don't want to go too far into it. The easiest way I found with Kairos was to go deeper inside my body and look at the systems that were interacting with each other and how they express themselves through my memories. But logging memories is hard because they're very subjective. So what I started doing very early on was piling data on photos I would put in Instagram. And these photos it just might be the weather, but it might be the weather and then a picture and then the music I was listening to. So suddenly these photos that I was creating and mashing up were these massive pictographs of a single moment that I could start to say, oh, that's what I was feeling. I really wanted to start to travel back through time with that. Today, obviously, how I look at data is much different. I love gyroscope, as Timu was talking, but the things I do online have a very real effect with the things I do offline. So there's always a direct relationship. I don't believe you're online or offline. I believe you're both, but how they meet is really what defines whether your life is overwhelming you or your life is like being okay to you. So let's talk about why I think this is important. I've been doing some work and some consulting recently in the field of chronobiology. Actually, the Nobel Peace Prize just went to a couple scientists in chronobiology. And chronobiology is the study of the organism, the fleshy, meaty part of me, and how it relates to time. So light gives my mind cues and things like that. But there's really no study of cyborgs in time, right? And as cyborgs, I think it's super important to talk about why cyborgs in time make difference, because as a machine-human hybrid, that's what you all are, right? That's by using your phone, you've become this machine. You have a different experience of time, and it explains a lot of what's going on in the world today. A lot of people get hung up with the word cyborg. I'm not talking about biorobotic, where you're part machine, like in your body. And no, a cyborg is someone who actually just has technology that creates a feedback loop of some sort. And everyone I know depends on these feedback loops. So if we look at our brains at a very high level, you've kind of got the lowest part of the brain, the reptilian brain. You've got the mammalian brain, then of course you've got the primate brain. And these are really time parts of the brain. They're not actually behavior parts of the brain. Because I can tell you, all the biohacking in the world means nothing if you're dead, right? So time is that thing that keeps it all moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about those time signals. So the limbic part of your brain, you've got your peripheral outputs, heartbeat, liver function, muscles, enzymes. You've got your central outputs, when to go to sleep, when to wake up. And then, of course, you've got your, are you eating? Oh, I must be in the middle of my day. Are you running? Is it light outside? So from a chronobiology standpoint, your mind literally travels through time all the time. Your cells in your body even have little regulators in them that say, I'm getting old, now is the time to get old. So how do we start to hack these little clocks for all sorts of things? So I thought I'd look at like, well, what have these clocks done to society? And I thought, well, the lowest part of our brain basically created our understanding of the seasons. And then if you move up a little bit, that part of the brain created our understanding of systems, big systems like governments and institutions. And of course, this crazy front part of our brain that likes to make you feel like you're never good enough, that created things like fashion and media and shopping, right? That's why that's so fast, and as you go back, governments, and then of course the earth. But from a cyborg standpoint, as you replace that front part with things that are always on and always connected, your brain short circuits. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I've started using technology to hack my brain. So I took this idea that my body is this giant time machine, but so is the technology in my life. It's a very crude time machine. Of course, Uber isn't as good as the cells in my body of knowing when I need something, but technology is a time machine. And I want to walk you through this very slowly, because once you think about this, you can change everything. You can stand outside time, right? Because right now you're kind of stuck in it. Let's talk about just the evolution of time and hacking, right? Not a lot of disruption in the clock, right? It's the same clock. Not a lot of ways we can disrupt it. But there are people doing some interesting things with analog time that I enjoy looking at. These are two clocks I keep in my home. This is a today clock, and this is a season clock. So the today clock only does one rotation per 24 hours on the hands, and my season clock only does one rotation per year. Do you understand? So automatically, by learning to keep time with those clocks, I have a different perception of just an hour or a minute, because an hour over here is much smaller than an hour over here, right? Now, it's hard in the beginning to really get your head around this and why you would want to do this, but if you've ever felt depressed or anxious or scared, time cannot be your friend at times, right? So learning to hack time to get through things that are difficult fast or slow things that are beautiful down is the most highest level cyborg shit you can do, all right? And what I'm going to show you with a lot of this, you're going to go, oh, wow. So let's go back for a minute. One of the newest versions of time, of course, obviously is the Apple Watch, and they now show you your body as this clock, and you can see through the day. They call them rings. But time hacking for people and humans is not new. We've just never been good at it. If we go back to 1896, these were called tsunami stones, and the Japanese placed them all over the island. And basically, if you could read kanji, these tsunami stones say, don't build your house here, because if you do, you're going to lose it. But with time and progress, we ignored the signs and we built over them, and obviously we got these giant tsunamis which wiped everything out. We find the stones and go, oh my gosh, I left myself a note for the future, but I ignored it. In Copenhagen, there's something called the world clock. It's a clock that does a rotation every 25,000 years. In a mountain in Texas, there's a clock called the Clock of the Long Now that's a 10,000-year clock. I was just in Norway. They, of course, have the seed bank, which I don't ever want to use that clock. That means all the food's been gone. And, of course, there's forests in Norway that are planting libraries for the future. So let's get right into this. What is the hardware of time travel as we know it today, this technical hardware? So the first hardware, sorry, these slides always give me a hard time on this projection unit, is just the everyday screens that you use. So you've got screens in your car, screens in your house, screens on your body, and screens in your pocket. Now, just a screen obviously will tell you the time, but it also tells you how often you need something. How often you need something comes from the software of the screens. So let's look at that. We all know that the most obvious piece of time that you have is in software is a calendar, right? I'm going to do this next week. And when next week comes, you either keep looking at it or you leave it. But we've gotten better. We now have software that manages our past. So on this day, on this a year ago today, here's all your years at once. Here's all your years grouped into a way that we think you'll remember or understand them. So just like I took those pictures back in the early 2000s and made these mashups of memories, AI does that for you now. But there's more interesting uses of this. So a lot of people remember Google Glass. I wore Google Glass for a long time. I did some interesting consulting with a gentleman from Google about Google Glass, and I thought I'd share that with you. It's something I don't normally talk about, but I recently started to. Google Glass was a time machine. So the UI for Google Glass had two elements. It had this main element that when you saw it and tapped it, you'd see OK Glass. But then if you swiped to the forward, you would see the past. If you swiped to the back, you would see the future. The future is not hard. We do it every day. What's the temperature going to be like? What's next on my playlist, right? But what was difficult for most people to get their head around back when I was describing how to use time in an interface was we didn't have these obvious ways that we look at time through an interface today. One of the first things I did with Google Glass and the time interface was I built a system, sorry, slides, I'm so sorry. There you go. That when I would be in the mall and I had my credit card tied to the same system I was tracking everything, if I started using my credit card too much where I was going to overspend, I would get a message sent to the future saying shop less. So I literally would start getting these little messages saying I was about to hit this limit. But it goes further, because today with Apple Watch, there's something built in it called Time Machine. And what Time Machine allows you to do with Apple Watch is it allows you to scroll the digital crown forward and see, obviously you can't go forward in time there, but if you did it here, I could see my next appointment. I could see when the sun's going to go down. I could see the temperature changing through the day. If I keep scrolling that digital crown forward, I could even see the moon cycle. So I want you to know that right now, if you have a watch, you can transverse time forward, all right? And why this is important is I'm going to teach you something at the very end that's going to change how you deal with life. And obviously, as I said earlier, you can scroll the digital crown backward and see your behavior throughout the day. So 2 hours ago, how active was I? 2 hours ago, how was I eating and sleeping? Obviously, we all understand this when it comes to the planets. You can do it with the moon. During the full moon, which just happened last week, I keep my watch face on moon so I can scroll forward and go, okay, when's this shit going to be over? You can scroll through the Earth, and one of my favorite ones is you can scroll through the galaxy. You can go to your planetary alignment on your birth or when you met someone. So this is what I like to call machine Kronos. It's chronologically ordered machine time, right? We can see now, the future, the past. But what is machine Kairos? Is there such a thing, this alternate version of machine time? And is it why we all are suffering so badly right now? And the answer is yes. So algorithmic time, or machine Kairos, is what happens when your mind and your sense of time is reordered by another system. I'm going to give you 3 examples. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram all use non-chronological time to talk to you. You all know this, right? Okay. Non-chronological time is sorted, I like to think of it in 3 ways. So algorithmic trending, algorithmic sorting, or algorithmic delay. And I'll give you 3 examples of these 2 things, because how your mind sees non-chronological time affects how you deal with other people, why you have no patience, why everything seems to be happening at once or not happening at all, because you're relearning to think in non-chronological time. So algorithmic trending, this is a really good example. If you look at Facebook and or Twitter, there are different things going on. Sometimes they match and sometimes they don't. It really depends on your networks in those 2 places, who you're connected to, but more importantly, it depends contextually on where you are. And where you are and when you are together gives you a new piece of data, right? So it's a season. June in Helsinki is summer, but June in New Zealand is not, all right? The next thing, as soon as big companies learned that algorithmic sorting of time was a way to keep your attention, they started doing it everywhere. So YouTube and USA Today both do this now. And what they found is that people spend more time in those services when they don't give them things in algorithmic time, in chronological time. This is so important because everything you use is about to be reordered out of time. No one's on time, no one makes plans, everybody blows you off, right? It's not that you suck, no one understands time. This is a big deal. And the reason I talk about this is because it's affecting more than just us. It's affecting the planet, right? So if we look at kind of disasters and all the disasters happening in the world, it seems like, gosh, why is there so much going on? Well, algorithmically, we're getting disasters sent to us out of order, right? So you're kind of getting disaster, disaster, disaster combined with attention, attention, attention. And how disasters are processed through time really messes with people, because if you're on Twitter, you might see a disaster happen a little bit later than the rest of your friends, or a little bit sooner. I mean, but if you're on your phone, this is an alert in Japan when Korea fired a nuclear missile. Can you imagine getting a nuclear missile pop up? Right? Oh, shoot, I guess I better stop, right? So non-ordered versus ordered time and how we experience these systems are a bit much. The last thing I'm going to show you with this algorithmic delay is using it as an instrument. So there's this band called The Academia, which I love. I'm not going to play the video, but what they did was they used the delay on Facebook Live to create this recursive instrument. So they play a little bit, just like sampling, and then start Facebook Live, and then they wait and then play a little bit more. It's just genius. So let's get into the interface of time. So when you use software, these are the ways that you interact with it. It gives you things that you forgot, things from the past, things that are from the past, but milestones, things that you recently did, which is kind of like the past, but still familiar, things that you're doing now, the temporary, which is just the soon, but not that important, but you need to pay attention right now, and then, of course, the soon, the future, the end, and the memorialized. Now, this is a lot to comprehend, so I'm going to break it down because I want you to start to look at every single app on your phone through this lens of time. The first is the forgotten. Anything to do with pictures is the forgotten. We don't look for pictures anymore. When we do go to look for an old picture, we're usually like, we immediately go, okay, I know about when it was, and you scroll back through very quickly, and you go, okay, I know it was it, and you learn to like see all the pictures. So really, the pictures are like where we put the forgotten. It's stuff we don't need to deal with every day. The past, though, is much different. It's things that were memorialized that can be reserved to us on purpose. As you know, Facebook does this really well with On This Day. Time Hop does the same thing. Where things get a little bit screwy with this algorithmic time is Facebook allows you to edit these memories. So on this day, you can go into the settings for it and say, but don't show me these people or these places. So it's literally like Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I think was the movie. It was really genius. But you can go in and edit your memories there too. Facebook has recently started doing something with milestones too. So milestones take these things from the past and now group them together and organize them for you. So how you see these milestones affects your now. It also affects your past. Because if you think about Facebook, you're real careful now when you post something knowing you're going to have to deal with it a year from now. The recent is my favorite part of time ever, because the recent kind of makes me happy. It's the achievement that I don't need to recognize, that I can forget, right? So recents, you'll notice that the mobile phones are really good at recents. They show you like this just happened an hour ago. A lot of software will show you like, recently seen email. When you pull down and search for something, it shows you things you just were looking for. Doesn't recent make you feel good? Recent doesn't have the scariness that now does. And it certainly doesn't have the anxiety that soon does. Now is I hate these apps. I mean, I love them because I live on them, but these now apps suck. So if you've ever called for an Uber or a Lyft, that's basically weaponizing now. I need something now, right? You're Veruca Salt, right? When you go on Netflix, I need to be entertained now, right? So the fact that you can have dominion over forcing something into your present moment is what's messing things up, right? And what's interesting is how we start to look at now becomes shaped by how we treat these other people. If we go on, the soon for me is a really kind of pleasant place. It's things that I might need to do. So like if I'm going someplace that says you need to leave soon to get to your appointment on time, you'll need your boarding pass soon, right? So I prefer to have my boarding pass when I get to the airport, but I understand why soon is the best we can do right now. And of course, the future. The future is one of these things we organize when we order or buy things. We usually buy them by when they'll be delivered, right? We don't order them like, when you need it, so when it'll be delivered. But there's other ways to organize the future. A site called Hipmunk allows you to reorder the future by agony. And by agony, they mean how many segments or how long the total flight will be. So using the future in a way that we understand and slows us down. The easiest way to look at the future, though, is on playlists. So everything from Apple Music to Spotify, if you've ever used a playlist, shows you your history, what you're listening to now, and what you're about to listen to. So in essence, when you ask for a playlist, you're orchestrating your mood for the next 10 hours. And if you wanted to change it, you could go into that playlist and edit it. And of course, we've got the end, Facebook, Facebook and Google both allow you to orchestrate your death. So how do we look at all of this together? So I think Uber is the best way to look at all of this together. So if you need an Uber, you can get a car now. But while you're in Uber, you can use a service like Snapchat is integrated into Uber right now, to share with your friends, which then becomes their now and their soon. As soon as you get out of the car, before you do, it asks you if you'd like to have dinner waiting for you when you get to where you're going. And then when you actually exit later that day, you get a survey. So think about Uber as this way to reorganize and restructure your time, and it becomes much different. The temporary is one of these really scary things that are happening big time now in technology, because what it's doing is it's allowing us to see things in this really ephemeral way, which I think leads to a lot of anxiety. So Google Authenticator or any type of authentication system, like two-factor security, is a temporary system, right? I'm sure you've all raced to quickly put in the code, oh shoot, I've only got 30 seconds. Or you call up on a conference line, and it goes, please enter the office, please enter. And you're like, dude, I need to think, right? So the temporary really messes with us, and there's more and more. It's kind of like the now, all those kind of apps that bring things now are being replaced by these apps that are the temporary, which are much scarier than the now, because it's the now you'll never hold on to, and that's the thing that kind of makes you calm until you learn to meditate. And of course, you've got apps like Waze, which show you all these accidents and things going on a map, but they're temporary. They'll go away in a little bit. So let's talk about how we can time travel. So if you wanted to speed down, relive, slow down, pause, reinforce time using these methods I've shown you, you want to start to use your applications much differently. This is really kind of hard stuff. So to speed time up, sorry, these slides always drive me crazy. To speed time up, you want to just start using your devices like you've always used them. So wearables will tell you, meditate now, stand up now, leave early, get to these appointments, percentages on your phone battery. These are all things that are speeding up your perception of time. But if you wanted to, just like, I don't want to do that. The first step in like learning to hack time is I just want to learn to relive it, right? So spend more time in these applications that have photos. Spend more time looking backward at them. I think photos are a really good way of looking at your life to slow it down a little bit, but most importantly, looking at places. So applications that show you your photos in places really slow down time. So I encourage you to try it. It's like cyborg meditation high level. Also, looking at places where you've been over time really helps you understand and slow down time. One of my favorite little things that my partner and I do is we collect music when we go places using Shazam on passive mode, so just automatically logging all the music we hear. We then capture photos. We then go home and create playlists for those songs, and then we program the house to use the colors in the photos to create the memories. So basically, we download the memory into the house, which then recreates it. It's really kind of fun. But if you wanted to slow down time just in your everyday life, there's some simple things everybody does. Obviously, people change their lock screens, right? I was one of these people that had a lock screen on my phone that helped me just focus. A lot of people have their family members on there. You can use an app to meditate. That will really help you. Apps today now have mechanisms to help you slow down, like if your iPhone will help you plan your bedtime. If you've used Google Calendar, it helps you create new habits. So under Event Reminder, you now can create a goal, which then looks for open spaces. One of my favorite ones is this guy named Ben Grossman. Facebook can be really overwhelming for stress, and part of the reason is on Facebook, there's all these times and dates. So, there's 2 hours ago, 10 minutes ago, then you've got all of these, how many people like this, and then this is when it happened. The Facebook decrementer by Ben Grossman actually removes all the time and all the numbers from Facebook, so it doesn't overwhelm you. If you looked at Facebook without any metrics to actually use it, you would love it. The thing that makes Facebook suck is how much you're behind or ahead. To pause time, though, I like to think about how I used my phone. So I also do selfies with my home screens because they kind of show me what my values are through time. Phones are really interesting mirrors into the type of people we are. So as you can see over time, my phone screens really evolved a lot to the point now where last year I was basically had my folders in the feelings that the apps created. So lust, vanity, suffering, greed, right? So every time I used an application, I was forced to deal with a feeling I should have been having, but I wasn't because I was busy. To where you just get down and you start to paring away your phone, so it's just basically nothing. Also, I love to use applications now that allow me to snooze or push things away. So, because email is one of these things that has to be done now. So this is, applications that help me focus on that, really slow me down. There's this great thing called Inbox When Ready, which locks you out of your inbox. It also only allows you a certain amount of time. And of course, for social media, this is where I think some of the most profound work is being done. I use this company called Dopamine Labs, which puts a wrapper over all my social media apps. So when I go to use them, instead of being let in to quickly jump on Twitter or Facebook, it stops me and says, breathe. Breathe. And then lets me into the application, right? So the idea is, I'm starting to use the technology to change my perception of time. I love to reinforce my values. So all of my systems have, of course, the night shift on them. They all have options. I use GPSs that actually tell me how many calories I'll burn or whether I stay dry or wet. I use other systems that take me ways I've never gone before, so introduce serendipity. Of course, I'm like everyone else. I use a bunch of stuff to meditate. I balance my sleep around or things that give me messages on when to go. Also, I'm very influenced by the moon, so understanding that when there's a full moon, I'm not going to sleep well and being prepared for that. And then, of course, expanding my mind by design. This is kind of heavy, heavy stuff, but what I do now is I organize my phone screen, my reminders, by the system of my mind. So the first thing is my body, right? My total fitness for the day, my total fluid intake for the day, whether it's caffeine and water, my movement. Then the world around me, the weather, the sky. From there, the things I need to do soon, the things I need to do after that, and the bigger things coming up, and then last, my memories. So when I look at my home screen, I basically travel from this part of my mind through and out to the world. So it slows it all down for me. I do some really weird things that have helped a lot too. All my device names are always values. So my watch is called kindness, my phone is called compassion, and my computer is called open your heart. So when I connect to these things or I get messages from them, I'm forced by the system to come back in to focus on what's important to me. I also organize files not into folders, but by value. So things that bring me hope or joy and love, I use colored tags for those. So it's really, really kind of profound. I use tasks and alarms that remind me all day long to slow down or be more open. Again, so often we create to-do lists that don't have the very fundamental things that are about being kind to ourselves. And I think it's just one of these great things that we all can do, and it's really easy. For instance, when I get in my car and the car connects to Bluetooth, I get a message to use to drive. So I'd like to wrap up by talking about how can you do this and start getting your feet wet today. So I'd like to teach you how to reprogram your future. When I started this project 10 years ago, I had no idea that I'd be saying, well, how can I work with the future? But about 5 years ago, I started using this journal system to write notes to myself that would come back in the future. Since then, the stuff has progressed a lot, and there are apps that do this really, really well. One of my favorite ones is this newer app that lets me program the future of love. And how that works is this. The app is called Jack, and it allows you to take a picture or a film and allows you to put a note on it and send it to anyone or yourself, okay? But they can't open it until you tell them. So you set a time on it in the future. It does two things. It creates a sense of anticipation, and it's there when you don't think you're going to need it. So automatically, like my partner will get these messages, these jacks from me that are in the future that are created in the past. So I have this ongoing relationship of love in the future with him and myself. I even send myself jacks. But then you could do this more provocatively if you wanted to get into biohacking. MyFitnessPal has this really neat function. When you finish eating for the day and you log your weight, it shows you how much you'll weigh in 5 weeks. So a lot of times, if I want to have a donut, I'll log the donut and then not eat it just to see what I'll weigh with that donut. Do you understand? So, using applications like MyFitnessPal really are kind of a more practical example. I love Evernote. One of the things I do in Evernote is I tag notes with the location and the future time of an event. So like for this conference, my was tagged today months ago, and it didn't show up at this location until today when I walked into it. It's kind of provocative, the way that you can start to mess with time there too. And then finally, this kind of on tomorrow. So I'm one of these people who suffers from anxiety and depression at times. My anxiety just like rips me apart. My heart beats a mile a minute. I think I'm going to die. I'm in an emergency room. Or depression. I just call my friends and go, okay, I think I'm going to kill myself. And they're like, okay, just slow down. And it's been hard. I mean, as an almost 50-year-old, I've dealt with this my entire life. So what I started doing was like, how could I work with my anxiety and depression if they're never going to go away? So I used this service called Dabble Me, and I started writing myself notes about my anxiety or my depression, and knowing that they would come back to me in the future. And what this allowed me to do was remind myself when I had a bout of anxiety or depression that it was going to be okay. Some of these notes would be checklists. Some of these notes would be reminders of, okay, you're probably feeling really hard right now. You're probably feeling really empty. And where that didn't work, I had this whole other routine. But what it slowly did was reprogram me to expect these things never to go away and to always start to work with them. So can you start to reprogram your future? Every single one of you today by being a cyborg and using technology. The answer is absolutely yes. You do it every day. When you go on Facebook and you create a new post today, it comes back to you a year from now. So I'd like to encourage you all tonight to go home, put a post on Facebook, and on that post, write yourself a note. And you can share it just to yourself. You don't have to make it public. And know that it's going to come back to you a year from now. And in that note, I want you to write down everything you're afraid of. Every person who's hurting you, everything you think you're going to lose, every piece of security you need. Be brutal with yourself. Because a year from now, that note is going to come back to you as a memory. And that memory is going to be unfounded. And you're going to be happy, and those problems aren't going to be real. You can hack time. You can change your life. I believe in this so much, I hacked love. And to the day, I'm engaged to this man, and I can't believe it. Thank you so much, and be good to yourselves.